Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the number one way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
Hey movie lovers, it's Jackson here from the Back to the Blockbuster podcast. If you've ever wanted to hear an amateur cinephile and an industry professional chat about film and television, then look no further, because every week my co-host Gaius and I, we bring you the latest industry news, break down the most recent trailers, try to beat the box office with our weekly predictions, and dive into our favorite movies on their anniversaries. And every second Friday, you can look forward to the Back to the Blockbuster spin-off, Deep Dives with Owen and Gaius, where the duo dissects a movie of their own choice. All this and more wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Films and Fermentation. We're back on track with episode 115. We're recording on our normal night, so it feels a little more like a regular show for us now. Hopefully. Maybe. So that's right. We are Films and Fermentation, a movie and alcohol podcast. I'm Leo.
I'm Kevin.
I'm Mike.
We're three friends who like to talk shit about movies while getting shit-faced. On this episode, we're taking a break from fiction, and we're going to look at some real-life stories through the eyes of documentarians. Sometimes charming, sometimes haunting. The thing about these documentary films is that they have us thinking about them long after we watch them. So I feel like it's going to be a little bit more of a serious episode, although I've been wrong in the past. We do always kind of find a way to go over it. I've been wrong before. Don't forget to drop us an email, filmsoffermentation@gmail.com, or visit linktree.com/filmsoffermentation to find all of our social media and podcast links. We're on Threads now as well on Instagram. You can find us at facebook.com/filmsoffermentation, instagram.com/filmsoffermentation, at filmsfermented on Twitter. You can DM us on Twitter if you like. You know, we're out there on all the different social media apps, so you can find us anywhere. Become part of the Films and Fermentation family by joining us on Patreon and supporting the show, or going to teespring.com at the Films Fermented storefront to buy some of our merchandise.
Kevin needs equipment.
Merchandising, where the real money from the movie is made. So, gentlemen, what are we drinking this evening?
I'll go first.
I think I was going to tell you to go first anyway, since you have a little destination to tell us about.
There you go. My wife and I were able to take a day trip today, deeper into South Jersey, and we came along a little town called Woodstown, actually, I believe. Woodstown, New Jersey. And I saw about it recently on Instagram. It's a old bank converted into a brewery. So intrigue, especially for my bank examiner wife. And we went there. We were able to take our puppy of 6 months, which we were kind of nervous about because she's not used to like exciting new places. But it was a good trip. We were there. Well, it was practically just us. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flights between the two of us. I think we sampled everything but their seltzer and their frozen drinks. You know, so we were able to get everything that was on draft. One of our favorites that we found there, this was on Nitro when we were there, but I'm sure it's going to be equally as good. It's called Cal Tippin'. It's a milk stout from Farmer. I'm sorry, I didn't even mention the name of the brewery. Farmers and Bankers Brewing. Farmers and Bankers Brewing in Woodstown, New Jersey. It is the their catchphrase is the first national brewing company. This is an unfiltered beer, may contain sediments. It is 5.6% alcohol by volume. It's a milk stout, so it's going to be a little heavier. But I really enjoyed this. This was one, and there was another one that we really liked. It wasn't available in cans. It was strong like bull, which was really, really good. So I recommend it. I know Lee. It's kind of down along your way as opposed to coming up towards us. You'd go down a little further south than where you are now. It's a nice environment, though. They did have a small beer garden in the back, large open tap room, tasting room. It was just nice. Very nice.
Maybe I'll shoot them an email and let them know we're giving them a little shout out on the show tonight.
Yeah.
Mike, what do you got going on?
Well, this
Are
week.
you on call?
No, that's next week. Next week is on call, though. I kind of wish it was this week because I'm so freaking tired. I'm so lazy, tired.
He's
But
burned out.
I am. I'm fucking burned out. I'm just drinking a Cayman Jack strawberry margarita.
I like that was a good flavor. I had a couple of those at Kevin's the other day.
Yeah, they were very good.
So I was trying to come up with a theme for my drink tonight, and I had a hard time because my documentaries are kind of out there.
Mm-hmm.
But so what I decided to was theme my drink to somebody else's documentary on the list. So Katie and I went to Chick-fil-A for dinner tonight. So I got my Chick-fil-A cup here. So in honor of the documentary on Kevin's list, Super Size Me, I have a supersized drink here. And what I'm drinking is called the Irish Coke. So I have a cup of Coke here. It's actually Diet Coke because I prefer that over regular. And it's got an ounce of whiskey in it and 2 ounces of Irish cream mixed together real good. And it's got a nice fizzy, milky flavor. Kind of tastes something similar to like an ice cream float.
Oh, wow.
To which my wife said it smells nasty.
Well, both of you guys are doing milky things, and actually tomorrow is National Milk Chocolate Day.
Tomorrow is National Milk Chocolate Day?
Yep. That's according to my beer calendar here. That talks about chocolate beer stouts.
Oh, then having a Hershey Porter would have made
a Hershey
great.
Porter tomorrow.
Yeah.
I know. All right. Mike, anything happened this week?
Nah, not really.
Never.
Yeah, you only got 3 things on this list.
This week in Bill history.
We brought the soundboard back because he didn't do it last week.
No, I used the communicator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
1932, White Zombie, the first feature-length zombie film directed by Victor Halperin and starring Bela Lugosi, is released in the U.S.
So, I have not seen this film, but I know of it because as somebody who's a fan of zombie films and is a big fan of the George Romero ones, this is one of the movies that kind of inspired him to do Night of the Living Dead. But what is interesting about this film is it's not the zombie as we know it nowadays, that Walking Dead sort of thing. It's sort of the Haitian, brainwashed kind of zombie person. So it's like the person who just kind of loses their spirit.
These are the ones that dig through the ditches and burn through the bridges. Through the witches
and scream in the back of my Dragula. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Those zombies. the White Rob zombies.
The White Rob zombies.
Early film for Bela Lugosi. Like, I think it was right before he did Dracula. What else you got for us, Mike?
1951, Walt Disney releases animated musical film Alice in Wonderland, featuring Catherine Beaumont, J. Patrick O'Malley, Ed Wynn, and Sterling Holloway, and songs by Sammy Fain and Bob Hillard.
All right. People talk about motion capture in films nowadays, especially with like things like Avatar and with Josh Brolin playing Thanos in the Infinity War saga. But Mocap is nothing new because Alice in Wonderland was one of the first mocapped films.
Mhm.
You know,
Yep.
they actually filmed Catherine Beaumont and Pat O'Malley and Ed Wynn and all like acting out their parts in the film on a studio lot, and the animators drew the animation around the recording of these actors playing out their parts.
For more realistic motions.
More realistic. That's why the motions have sort of like a fluidity to them that you haven't seen in animation before. So yeah, nothing new. That old mocap, that innovative Walt Disney company. Last one's a good one.
In 1954, On the Waterfront, directed by Elia Kazan.
Elia Kazan.
Elia Kazan, thank you very much. Starring Marlon Brando and Eva Marie Saint, is released. Academy Award for Best Picture in 1955.
So an Academy Award for Best Picture in 1955, Best Actor Marlon Brando, and Best Actress Eva Marie Saint. So it was a big time winning film.
It ran the gambit.
Ran the gamut. And of course we get that great quote from this film. Could have been somebody. Could have been a contender instead of a bum, which is what I am.
Stella!
That is a different film, but yes. That is also Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
That was Streetcar Named Desire.
Oh, I knew that.
If you've never seen On the Waterfront, highly, highly recommend it. Classic film.
Look
amazing
what
performances.
Did to my boy. Look what they...
Yeah, that would be The Godfather. You're getting all your Marlon Brandos mixed up. Got to throw a little Dr. Moreau in there now. I hate the heat. It's so hot out here. Pass me the Doritos. All right.
My boy, you shall be strong by the earth, son. You shall have power.
Little Superman too. Wow. That's a deep cut there.
He got paid for it.
He got paid for it. Mike, you have a must-try beer craft destination for us?
I got a craft destination in Kentucky called the Dueling Barrels Brewery and Distillery. Dueling Barrels Brewery and Distillery is the Eastern Kentucky's first combined beer, bourbon, and moonshine operation. The nearly 30,000 square foot facility houses 3 copper pot stills and 19 fermenters with a capacity of producing 40,000 barrels annually. Dueling Barrels is expected to join the famed Kentucky Bourbon Trail, extending the experience to 142 miles east of Pikeville. In addition to bourbon, Dueling Barrels produce a variety of craft styles, including Pikeville American Pale Ale and Hopfield and McCoy IPA. Sounds like a stop for us, Lee.
Yeah, it sounds fun, man. Hopfield and McCoy. A little Hatfield and McCoy play on words there. I like that.
Yeah. But we can get a bourbon, moonshine, and our beer. One-stop shop.
We have a glip this week.
You think?
Synopsis according to
took 2
glip.
pages.
Yeah. Brought to you by Newsly.me. Newsly.me is an all-in-one audio super app for iOS and Android that'll read the news to you in a natural human voice. Stop scrolling, start listening. Go to Newsly.me today and use the promo code ANDFERMENT to get your first month premium subscription for free. So our glip this week, we didn't have one last week, but we definitely have one this week. This one is, no pun intended, out of this world.
And it's probably the biggest one we've had since.
This is one of the longest ones we've had. It was a pretty long episode, too. I mean, it was our Star Trek episode 114, The Final Frontier, which was around an hour and a half, maybe a little bit more.
Could have been longer.
So there was a lot of content. I did cut a lot of stuff out too.
Down a lot.
Yeah, I think I told you guys, you get the scripts when I send them to you.
I know.
Make some suggestions.
These things don't happen until minutes before we go on the air.
You know, I have a tendency to go overboard. So our glip synopsis this week about the episode 114 Final Frontier. Kevman is trying to figure out how the program works, and Mike is having technical issues.
I'm still trying to figure out how the program works.
Leo sent films implementation, and the Dark Mama led the way for Open Barbie.
That Dark Mama.
We were talking about Dark Knight and Mamma Mia coming out the same year, like Oppenheimer and Barbie are coming out the same year.
So Dark Mama.
Dark Mama. Kevman and Mike were discussing the grubs they were going off the air and the Chinese food lunch they might be having tomorrow.
What?
You were talking to Kevin about how he was ordering food on air when we were on the
Oh yeah,
back
yeah,
to the
yeah.
Blockbuster pod, and he was having Chinese food for lunch because Megan doesn't like it.
That's
Mhm.
right.
Catman and Leo discussed the topic of movies turning 30 and decided to make an episode of it. That's actually straightforward and to the point.
Yeah.
That was like the only point so far.
Kevman and Mike discussed the Taylor and the Gold Press Latinum. So that
We're
was
talking
That's
DS9.
DS9.
that's Goldicott, who was the Taylor on DS9, and the Gold Press Latinum is
No,
what the
no, it
Frankies
wasn't
always
Gold-
wanted.
it
Was
wasn't
it Goldicott,
Goldicott.
or was one of the
No, it was
Kardashians?
Merrick.
Garrick.
It was one of
Garrick.
the Kardashian guys, right?
It's Garrick.
Yeah.
Garrick, not
And
Merrick. Sorry.
Garrick.
Catman and Mike are discussing who is the most annoying character on the show and who started it.
Mhm.
Catman and Mike, you guys got a lot of play in this clip because I did a lot less talking last week than I normally do. Catman and Mike discussed the original series and the third season. Mike has watched the first 14 episodes of Discovery and thinks it's a slow burn.
I said that.
And Catman and Mike discussed the list of captains in Star Trek and decided to make a mudslide. That's your synopsis.
You got 14 episodes in, and it's still a slow burn.
Yeah.
I think once you get into double digits, if it's not capturing your attention, you drop it.
No,
you
it's,
know?
It's not a
it's
slow
got
burn
its
anymore.
moments.
It's just boring as
I know
fuck.
it's the way Glip is presenting it. I'm just saying,
No,
first 14 episodes of Discovery are a slow burn.
No,
don't know.
it's got its moments. It gets slow. That's happened really good. A couple episodes, then it gets slow again. It's like
that's Glip for you, man. That's
mhm.
our synopsis according to Glip. So I have a few notes from the last show, as if we didn't talk about Star Trek enough. We had a
missed shit.
couple things we forgot we wanted to talk about that we kind of missed, which was a relationship between Nichelle Nichols, who played Uhura in the original series, and Dr. Martin Luther King. She was planning on leaving the show after, I believe, her first season. And it was Dr. King who talked her into staying on because he and his daughters watched the show and they were happy to see a strong, African-American character being portrayed on TV.
Mhm.
And it was that message from Dr. King that convinced her to stay.
Mhm.
We have to thank Lucille Ball for the original series because it was the Desilu Productions that put it into syndication. After it went off the air, it was the syndication that made it as popular as it was, basically. And Riker's unusual way of sitting was due to the fact that the actor who played Riker, William Frakes, had an actual back injury that made it hard for him to sit down normally. And so he would do his famous leg over the chair seating thing because it was easier on his back. And a lot of scenes you see him with his foot up on something, like leaning on it, because it was another way of taking
That's
some of
not
that
a
weight off his
back
back.
injury. He was airing his crotch.
Yeah, those are some
And
tight
Leo?
uniforms, man.
Guys,
Like
It's
smell
Jonathan
the
Frank, not William
Riker musk.
William Riker, Jonathan Frakes.
Franks.
Smell the Riker musk. Come here, Wesley. Put your head in the
Those are some tight uniforms, man. I'm sweaty. Where? Yeah, my butt crack.
He could have worn the
balls.
skirt then. If he was that bad, he could have worn that skirt. Because
Wore the skirt. I know in the first season, a lot of dudes are wearing skirts.
yeah,
That ended very quickly. Like, that was like a first season
ahead
thing.
of their time. They were ahead of their time, even when they were ahead of their time.
I thought it was an interesting thing in that first season. Like, oh, so they can choose to wear whatever they want. So you see these guys walking around in the skirts
Mm-hmm.
on the case, and then it was like one season, it was like done. It was like the producers were like, no more hairy man leg.
Well, the first two seasons' uniforms were atrocious anyway.
Mm-hmm. It actually kind of
You mean the onesie
disappeared
jumper?
from the female uniform after a while.
Mm-hmm.
I give a little shout out to Pitch This Podcast, who hosted a live Twitter session last night where we talked about the evolution of podcasts and how to improve our podcast. We had a good time talking with Pitch This Podcast with Austin Boyer over at Wrestling World and everybody else who joined in on the live Twitter session last night. If you haven't listened to Pitch This Podcast, you need to check them out. They have a really cool concept where they take existing media and blend it together to make new scripts, which they then act out on their show. Today, I listened to Thomas the Snowpiercer, which was a combination of Thomas the Tank Engine and Snowpiercer. And I plan on listening soon to The Kashyyyk Shore, which is a blending of Star Wars and the Jersey Shore. Blue's Clues SVU, which I might be listening on my ride to work tomorrow. And Lego Mortal Kombat. So that's a shout out to Pitch This Podcast. Give those guys a listen. And we got one more little note we're going to talk about before we take a break, before our main segment. And that is an article I read on Instagram the other day from Cave Comics on Instagram. Wrote how with the Flash's recent flop in the box office, it became the highest, biggest comic book box office flop of all time, basically. It's an estimated loss right now, but it's getting there. So your 10 biggest comic book box office flops are these 10 right here. Number 10, losing $75 million, Green Lantern with Ryan Reynolds. Losing $84 million at number 9, The New Mutants.
Which I didn't think was a bad movie.
Wasn't that bad.
Yeah, that's the thing, too. It's like they're not necessarily all bad movies. Like I have one on here that I'm going to talk about in a moment. R.I.P.D. at 8, which is another Ryan Reynolds film, oddly enough. $92 million loss at the box office. Number 7 is the Fantastic Four, losing $100 million. This is, of course,
Which
the
one?
reboot, which had Michael B. Jordan as Johnny Storm, Kate Mara, and all that.
Miles.
Yeah, Miles Teller was.
Miles Teller. Yeah.
Number 6 is Black Adam, starring The Rock, which lost $100 million at the box office. Number 5 is The Suicide Squad. This is the James Gunn version that had Idris Elba and Margot Robbie return. And I actually really liked this version of The Suicide Squad. I thought it was a lot of fun. I think
this is the remake reboot.
I think it was the remake. It was the reboot of The Suicide Squad that had Will Smith in it.
Okay.
Which the one with Will Smith was terrible.
Yeah.
And I think based on that reputation, plus all the other DCEU films' reputations, Suicide Squad kind of didn't do well at the box office.
And didn't this also come out right at the peak of COVID, or right at the?
I think it was like right before COVID or right after, something like that. But I really liked it. I actually watched it again the other night after I saw this list, and I was like, yeah, it still holds. I like this movie. Dark Phoenix was number 4 at $133 million.
It sucked.
Kevin and I did not contribute to the loss because we both went to this theater together to see it.
Yeah.
It still sucked.
Wonder Woman 1984 is 3rd with a $137 million loss. I haven't seen this one yet. I really don't really plan on watching it.
You're not missing much.
Shazam! Fury of the Gods, $150 million loss is number 2. And with an estimated $200 million loss for Warner Brothers, The Flash, the recent Flash film that came out. So the thing that I thought was odd about this list was there's not one MCU film on here. The only films on here that are MCU adjacent.
Done by Fox.
Sony produced.
Sony Fox. Produced. So you have Dark Phoenix, Fantastic Four.
That was Sony, I think.
R.I.P.D. and the New Mutants.
I think the Mutants and the Fantastic Four were Fox Productions.
Yeah, one of them is Fox, one of them is Sony.
Fantastic
Two of them is Fox,
was
one was Sony. R.I.P.D. I think was I think that was a
Dark
Warner
Horse?
Brothers one too. But that's based on an independent comic. Like that's not DC or Marvel.
Right.
But yeah, there are no actual MCU films on this list.
No. Even the Eternals didn't make this list.
I bet if you got to number 11, the Eternals is probably there. I have a feeling some of these Phase 4 films might be in that top 20 list somewhere. I just thought this was interesting, and I wanted to bring that up. So we are going to take a quick break for some quick messages. When we come back, we're going to be looking at our favorite documentaries. And what we did for this was each of us picked 5 that we really, really like. We're going to talk about them quickly. And I have a few little honorable mentions that I'm going to throw in there at the end. So we'll be back.
Leo couldn't help himself.
I can't help myself. I got to go overboard. So we'll be back in a couple minutes.
Hello, Spooklings.
I'm Jason.
And I'm Kathy.
And we're the hosts of the weekly podcast, All Hallows Eve Podcast.
We are a husband and wife duo with a passion for anything spooky, macabre, and true crime, sprinkled with our own twist of comedy.
We explore topics such as the history of Halloween, the Butcher of Plainfield, Hocus Pocus 2, urban legends, superstitions, and more.
So come join us as we go down the rabbit hole that is All Hallows Eve Podcast.
Listen and follow us at allhallowsevepodcast.com or your favorite podcast provider.
Stay spooky, my friends.
Hello, everybody. Let me ask you a question. When you were a kid, did you ever wonder what teachers talked about in the teacher's lounge?
You probably didn't miss much. It's usually boring stuff like grading papers, lesson planning, and then figuring out the new train schedule.
Train schedule?
Well, I teach in the city.
But sometimes, at one of the not-so-cool tables in the back of the teacher's lounge, you might find us, the Fandalorians, teachers by day, nerds by night.
My name is Mr. Richardson, and by day, Mr. McDonald, Mr. G, and I teach and inspire America's youth.
But by night, we debate, discuss, and argue about all things in the pop culture universe on our podcast.
We discuss all the biggest pop culture topics in the world, like Ozark, Stranger Things, The Marvelous Miss Maisel, Marvel, Star Wars, Top Gun Maverick, The Old Man, Bridgerton, you name it, we'll probably discuss it.
You guys watch Bridgerton?
Yo, season 1 of Bridgerton was awesome. You don't know what you're missing. Since we are teachers, you will always get a ton of background information about our topics and original teacher-themed segments, like our pop culture morning announcements, building meetings, and post-observation reviews of shows and movies. Oh, and arguing. You'll get lots of disagreements and arguing, like way more than I'm comfortable with.
You can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Just search for The Fandalorians, Teachers by Day, Nerds by Night.
Then join us every Monday as we look into the current state of fandom and pop culture.
Hey, look, the bell's about to ring. We need to head to the buses. Hopefully we'll see you guys soon.
Well, I mean, they're not going to see us because this is a podcast.
I know.
But they can't even see us when you think about it, so they won't see us either.
Oh my God, you know what I meant. It wasn't literal. Just ring the bell. Ring the bell.
The Fandalorians, Teachers by Day, Nerds by Night. I hope you listen and subscribe to us soon.
I hate you guys.
Yeah.
All right, we are back from our quick little break here with our main segment, documentary films. I still haven't thought of like something like witty to say for the title of this program.
They were documentaries.
It's hard to be witty about documentaries. So what each of us did was we picked, these are not like, it's not like a list of like the greatest documentaries of all time or whatever. We picked 5 documentaries that each of us really like. And we're just going to go back and forth like we usually do, talk about them a little bit, why we enjoyed them so much and why we recommend you check them out yourself. And then I have a few little honorable mentions for the end. And I said I have one that I didn't really want to recommend. I'm going to mention it anyway. It's an HBO film that I watched recently called Jared from Subway. And it talks about Jared Fogle when he became the spokesman for Subway and then his fall when he was arrested for child pornography and pedophilia and all that. Yeah. It's a dark documentary. It's very disturbing because you actually hear like police recordings and shit like that. And it's awful. If you're somebody who is triggered by that sort of thing, I would avoid it. But if you're somebody who can tolerate that sort of thing, you can check it out if you want to. It's on HBO Films. But now we're going to get into the ones that we actually want to recommend to you. These are a little more lighthearted. Some are a little sad. When you hear the content, you'll know why. But they're all, respectable in some way. And Kevin, actually, you just added one to yours that I saw in the theater and I totally forgot about. And now I'm mad that I don't have it on my list. But that's okay. That's okay. Well, no, that's okay, because now that it's on your list, I don't have to put it on my list, and I can still talk about it. So, should I go first, or what do you guys want to go first?
You should go first.
Okay, I will go
because
first.
you have more content.
I always have. Obviously, I've seen a lot of documentaries, as well as a lot of other films that I watch constantly. So, the first one I have on my list is it's a little-known documentary. You can find it on Amazon Prime. I used to use this in class when I taught high school, particularly when I did my Shakespeare unit, because it's a really fun way of looking at making Shakespeare accessible for high school kids. And it's called Shakespeare High. What makes this documentary unique is there's no narrator and there's no like filmmaker in the background speaking to the kids or asking questions. The whole documentary focuses on these students and what they're going through, and they're the ones who kind of tell you the story. And it takes place in California and focuses on 3 high schools who are all entering this Shakespeare competition where they act out scenes from various plays. And it's interesting because you have 3 schools. One is a performing arts school. So every kid there is focused on being an actor, focused on being a performer, takes everything very, very seriously. This is like their biggest competition of the year, and nothing else matters. The other school is this really large school in a small town in California, but they're the school, even though they're not the performing arts school, they're the one that kind of wins every year. They're like known for being really good at the Shakespeare competition.
Okay.
And then the third school is an inner city school in Compton.
Straight out of Compton?
Like, yeah, pretty much. It focuses on some at-risk teens who go to the school. And these kids are learning about Shakespeare for the first time, entering this competition for the first time, and kind of learning how to take it seriously. And when they get to the actual competition at the end, it's interesting to see like these schools that are all like professional about it and real into it, and these kids from this little inner city school who have never experienced something like this, you know, being thrown to the wolves sort of. And ends on a really cool note. I'll spoil it a little bit. The inner city school wins first place in one of the 3 competitions that they have.
Nice.
You know, so it ends on like a really lighthearted note. And it's really cool to see the differences between all these different schools and how they take it, and to hear the story from the kids' point of view, and not have some like adult filmmaker in the background kind of guiding you through the story.
Right.
You know, it's a really, really cool one. It's not really well known. It's called Shakespeare High. And last I saw it was on Amazon Prime. So
I will need to look that one up.
yes, it's a really cool one. So Kev, why don't you hit me with your first one?
Well, I was just going to tag on to yours. I follow a podcast called Schooled, which also kind of deals with how schools are unequal. You know, like suburban schools getting better funding, or the higher property taxes and how they contribute, and how the inner city schools struggle from time to time. So, I'm going to watch that because it's kind of something. Yeah. Anyway, so mine is Super Size Me, which was a very popular documentary. Came out in 2004. Haven't seen much from this guy since then, though. I'm looking now, and he has done a Super Size Me 2. Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse. Super Size Me 2, Holy Chicken, released in 2019. This is the brainchild of Morgan Spurlock. This is when this is his examining the influence of the fast food industry on young people in America, on everybody in America, how they're you can call it propaganda, you could call it advertising, the consequences of the unhealthy diet of eating out so often. So he for a month eats nothing but McDonald's fast food. And I think one of the biggest catches with this is if they offer, this was when McDonald's did supersizing, which was, there was always small, medium, and large, but then you could get the extra large, if they asked you if you wanted something supersized. With him, if they had asked him if he wanted something supersized, he had to get it supersized. And you're watching this and you see how it damages like his blood sugars, his blood pressure. Physically, it's affecting him. He was a relatively healthy guy in the beginning. It makes him more lethargic. It messes with his libido. You actually, like, nothing's off the table. He argues with his wife about what he's doing and why he's doing it and how it's, affecting their family. There you go. That's, commentary from
Chick-fil-A, not a sponsor of Films of Fermentation.
And looking up some interesting things about it, like he got sick physically sick in the filming. That was included. He filmed over 250 hours of footage. He put in maybe 1% of it, or less than 1% of it when you think about it. What was the other thing I just saw? Oh, it took him over a year to lose the 25 pounds that he gained in 1 month by eating nothing but McDonald's fast food. So I remember showing this in middle school. I was a sub, and it was one of the teachers I was covering. That was what they were going over, because it was like, I forget, home economics or something. And everything was pretty much okay until we got to the part where it interfered with his sex drive. Then it's like, whoa, which you'd think 7th and 8th grade students could handle because of their maturity level. Apparently, though, probably not. But it is one of the first documentaries I remember seeing. I'll be honest, I do think it affected how I eat fast food. I don't eat often. I introduced other alternatives than Burger King, McDonald's, and KFC and Taco Bell. Like Salad Works was something that came around. Subway apparently was supposed to help people lose weight. I found out from Jared. He was directing people to lose weight and other things, which we'll mention later. So yeah, and I did curb it. And you guys you can recall when I curbed eating. Apparently, I became a miserable motherfucker, but I did lose a shit ton of weight.
When you curb your eating, you curb your enthusiasm as well. So, have you heard of the Super Size Me controversy?
No.
So, this is the reason why Morgan Spurlock has kind of disappeared from the public eye for a while. After Super Size Me, which was like a phenomenon, did really well in the box office and had critical praise and all that. He was given a show on, I think it was either FX or Spike or something at the time. So it was like a weekly program where he would debunk something, because that was kind of what he became known for with the Supersized documentary.
Okay.
In 2017, he was set to premiere the Supersize Me sequel on YouTube, but they dropped him after he wrote an article titled, I Am Part of the Problem. You all right?
Yeah.
You're who?
He wrote an article titled "I Am Part of the Problem," in which he admitted to a lifetime of sexual misdeeds, which is right at the beginning of the Me Too movement. So he was kind of like outing himself in order to kind of like avoid the backlash. But even though he did that, his Super Size Me sequel was dropped from YouTube, and his broadcasters cut ties with him, so he was fired from his show on whatever channel it was.
Wow.
And it was also after that people started looking into the Super Size Me documentary, and he admitted that he had been drinking since the age of 13 and hadn't been sober for more than a week in over 30 years. So in the scene in Super Size Me where the doctor says, "Are you drinking any alcohol right now?" and he says no, he was lying. Because I remember there's a scene in the documentary where the doctor looks at his liver after the 30 days of eating McDonald's and says his liver looks like it was pickled in alcohol.
Oh, Jesus.
And the reason it was pickled in alcohol because it was pickled in alcohol. So he was kind of like outed as being sort of like a charlatan and everything.
Okay.
Leo, is that something we should talk about since we are an alcohol podcast?
What, alcoholism?
Yeah.
My liver is pickled along with my kidneys, my stomach, and probably my heart at this point too. So I am pickled and fermented. So he's kind of like outed as like a sort of a charlatan, and it kind of destroyed his career after that. Not that you should.
Up on him. I don't see it, but
it's. I can send you the link if you want. It's called "Is Super Size Me a Big Fat Lie?" Not that you should start eating McDonald's every day, 3 days, three times a day for 30 days or anything. It's still bad for you. But yeah, there was a little bit of controversy after that.
We all remember the pink. What was it? Pink slime, pink goo that ended up being chicken nuggets.
Yeah. McDonald's made a lot of shift to their product after that documentary.
Well, another thing I saw was that they dropped the whole Super Size Me option weeks after this movie was released at Sundance. It was crazy.
A lot. I think they all kind of did it because Wendy's used to have an option for biggie size, and it was like their version of super size, and then they dropped that as well.
Yeah, but now all they give you is a large. When you get a large cup, it's a supersized freaking cup anyway.
Yeah. and their large fries are pretty much the biggie fries, just not called biggie fries anymore. Mike, I really love the first one on your list. I left it for you because I knew you would put it on there, but I think this is an awesome documentary.
Yeah, For the Love of Spock, directed by his son Adam Nimoy. This examines pretty much the life of Leonard Nimoy, especially through his Star Trek years. One cool note about it that I saw was that the movie was funded by a Kickstarter campaign launched in June of 2015.
Mm-hmm. And
I thought that was interesting.
I remember Adam Nimoy appeared on Big Bang Theory.
Yep.
He was filming the documentary and wanted the insight of some fans, and so the Big Bang characters got to be interviewed for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's a awesome documentary. There was a lot I learned about him that I didn't know before.
I would call it the best Star Trek documentary out there. If you're a Star Trek fan, you have to watch this.
I call it one of the best documentaries out there too. Like, not just even like Star Trek. It's a really good documentary. It's the kind of documentary you only get from like somebody's son.
Yeah.
Telling the story about his dad.
It started before Nimoy passed, I believe.
Yeah, he started filming it while he was still alive. He passed while he was doing the filming. I think he mentions that at the end. But it was interesting. Like, I didn't know early in his career that some of the things he did before Star Trek. That I found that kind of fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
The singing for Bilbo Baggins.
Oh, there's always the Bilbo Baggins song.
Bilbo.
The
bravest little
hobbit of them all. Bilbo Baggins.
Now, him and Shatner had kind of the same beginnings. They did this show, that show, what show, like you did back then. And I mean, it's a really good documentary about Leonard Nimoy and his life. I talked about it, and how the character of Spock has changed the world.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I like this thing that from Leonard Nimoy. It was in the trailer for the film. He was talking about a review they got from Variety magazine after the show was first premiered, and in the article they wrote, "This show won't work." There's a good adjacent to this one if you want to see another documentary involving Star Trek. It's called Trekkies, and it's really funny. It's a documentary about the people who go to Star Trek conventions, and it's fascinating.
Was that hosted by Denise Crosby?
I think it might have been. I don't remember. I know. Okay. Yeah, somebody hosted it who was on Star Trek. Yeah, I think you're right.
Don't forget Chaos on the Bridge.
And Chaos on the Bridge is another really good Star Trek documentary about the beginning of Next Generation.
Yep.
My second one is, I love this one so much. It won the Oscar for Best Documentary the year after it came out. I was very happy about that. It's called My Octopus Teacher.
Please, teacher, teach me how to octopus.
Yes,
I want to octopus.
I have
octopi.
I have a fascination with the ocean, even though I'm terrified of it, and especially like deep sea creatures and things like that. And octopus and squids and cuttlefish and things like that are just fascinating creatures to me. And so the guy who did this documentary, his name's Craig Foster. He's somebody who's done a number of documentaries in his career, and he reached a point where he was kind of burnt out and wasn't sure if he wanted to continue doing this for a career and didn't know what to do. He was a little like shiftless and kind of like unaware of like what he was going to do next. So he decided to take a break, and he was staying at a house that was by this like little inlet area. And every day he would go out swimming to just to get out in nature and try to relieve some of the stress and all that he's had. And as he was doing these swimming excursions every day, he came upon an octopus, a very small one, and it came up to him, and he started playing with it. It was on his hand. It was touching him, kind of sensing if he was dangerous or not.
Mm-hmm.
And then what goes on after that is every day he starts going out and going to the same area and looking for this octopus. And it gets to a point that the octopus starts to recognize him. And as he would swim to this area every day, the octopus would be waiting for him. And it's a really cute documentary. He learns how to kind of enjoy what he's doing again, because he starts filming this every day now and starts making this documentary that he had no intention of making before. And just spending every day with this octopus. But it's also a little sad too, because octopus only live for a year, or at least this particular species only lives for a year. So
then they become sushi.
Yeah, so he becomes very attached to this octopus, and then gets to a point where it's dying, because after they give birth, they die. So the octopus gives birth, and he watches it give birth, and then watches it be attacked and torn apart by other fish. And he's like, he goes, as much as I want to stop it, this is the natural order of things, and I'm not God. I'm not going to stop how the natural order of things works. It was dying anyway, but it was
follows the prime directive.
Yeah, it was so bittersweet and sad at the end, but also still kind of uplifting in a weird way. It's a really, really fascinating documentary, and just kind of shows you how incredible a creature the octopus is and how smart they are.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'll
really
have to catch that. That's I know that's on Netflix, and you recommended it before.
Yeah, I did if anybody wants to go back and listen, I did a mini pod review of My Octopus Teacher. I want to say back in season 2 of Films of Fermentation. So it's a really, really, I definitely highly recommend that one.
Kind of like the aquatic version of Marley and Me.
No, yeah, except without the annoying dog. So what you got next here, Kev?
So my next one is something also on Netflix. I checked out not long ago, called The Social Dilemma, which it analyzes social media, social networks, and how it affects us. It affects the everyday person, how it monetizes and puts cash in the pockets of its creators, how intrusive it is into our daily lives. What I liked about the documentary was,
he says ironically as he records a podcast.
That's right. Is this a social media? Yes, it's a social.
I believe it is. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
We are on YouTube.
By the way, follow us on Thread and Twitter. I'm sorry, I mean X, or whatever the hell he's calling it now.
X, yeah.
Now, what I like is they went to the source. They went to the people who worked at Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and Google and Apple, and they break it down. And it's like, your algorithm is the minute you sign in, the minute you sign up, based on your profile. It starts off small with, hey, do you know this person or that person? And where's your geography? What's your demographic? And then because you give permissions from your phone, from the applications, to use the camera, use the microphones, use your data from where you're at. It's like you mention one thing to somebody and it magically appears as an advertisement, Case in point, the minute I lost my wedding ring and I talked about having to find a new one, wouldn't you know, 8 different providers of wedding bands all magically reached out to me through the advertising of Facebook and Instagram and everything else.
You and I were at that wine festival the one time, and we were joking about buying a bidet, and the next thing I know, I had bidet ads on my Facebook page.
Yes, you had a bidet. Not only did you have the ad, it was already installed on your toilet.
I have 2 of them now. I got a bidet in each bathroom.
I thought you meant you had 2 in 1 because you needed more, thrush. Anyway, it talks about the algorithms. It talks about who gets to see your data, how it's used, why it's used, and how little the people who use these applications are aware. They're in blissful ignorance as to what everything that they're giving up. And I've seen the documentary. I know of my algorithm. I know how it's being applied. And it does give me pause before I start to do anything. You know, they want my cookies. I don't give my cookies to anybody, you know?
Cookie.
I have this one. I have this one on my watch list on Netflix. I haven't seen it yet, but it's on my list.
It's
I
very
definitely want to check it out at some point. And it's funny. I had a guy knock on my door yesterday to try to sell me solar panels, and I was like, "No, I'm not interested. It's okay, you know." And then a few minutes later, I'm on Instagram and I'm getting ads from the company that the guy represented.
Oh, really?
It was really bizarre. So yeah, this is an interesting one, and I'm like half reluctant to watch it because of my own, you know, social media output.
Makes you want to start writing letters again, finding pen pals, you know?
I'll tell you what. I was watching on TikTok this morning coverage of the Senate hearing on UFOs that happened yesterday. And now I went on TikTok a little while ago, and it's nothing but UFO conspiracy theory videos popping up on my. God damn it! I just wanted to have an update from the congressional hearing, for Christ's sake. Mike has a theme going with his second one.
Yeah. I didn't go the whole theme. I'm just continuing last week's discussion. So this one is What We Left Behind. A look back at Deep Space Nine, which is what the last episode Deep Space Nine was called, was What We Left Behind. A lot of it talks about how it starts off with some of the cast reading letters that they received while making this, about pretty much these people shitting on the show. I mean, really, say they'd rather, you know, break their hand with a rusty hammer than watch this show.
Like mean tweets on Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah.
Yes. And they talk about how this show was more forward thinking than people give it credit for. One, having a African American captain, for one thing, and a lot of, you know, how, I'm trying to be politically correct about this one. Showing how a black man can raise a son, you know, because even in today's society, a lot of black children aren't being raised with their father there. So that they hit on that.
He was not just the first black captain; he's a single father on the show, and because Lokitas killed his wife.
Yes. Yeah, it's like Worf and Alexander.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that relationship in Deep Space Nine too. But no. What's really cool about this documentary is they get the different. They cut through different parts of it, but they have the five or six writers sitting in a room, and throughout the documentary, they are creating episode 1, season 8. You know, doing the board of it, talking about what they would do if they had another episode to do. 20 years in the future from then. So that's kind of cool. They pretty much write a whole episode within 2 hours.
Wow.
So if you're a fan, watch it. If you're not, watch it, and then maybe you become a bigger fan. Deep Space Nine, they're saying that it got a bigger fandom now with streaming apps, so you can just stream through it. Because it's more an episodic television show than it is a, you know, not episodic, but, you know,
overarching storyline.
Yeah, there are long storylines on that show,
which Star Trek never really had before. They didn't have a lot of that overarching story unless it was to be continued. Also, it's the first time that Star Trek had a 3-part episode. So it's to be continued, to the one, to be continued, to the third one.
I think I want to say like the streaming networks have led to the Star Trek shows being, you know, top watches all across the board, like not just like DS9, but
Yeah,
a
all of
lot
them.
of people are still watching TNG. A lot of people are watching the original series, Enterprise and Voyager and all that. They're all still up there because thanks to the streaming networks,
And the
people
BBC.
and the BBC, yeah, because people
Mhm.
are now, who didn't watch them before are discovering them. No
Yep.
pun intended. Star Trek Discovery. I'm like looking up the movies that I have on my list because I want to be able to talk about them a little more thoroughly here. So the next one I have on my list is, God damn, this is such a good documentary. I remember when I saw the advertisement for this, like setting a reminder for myself so I wouldn't miss the premiere. So this is one of the few like I've watched when it first came out. It was released in 2018. It's an HBO documentary. It's still available on HBO Max, or Max as it's called now, if you have that service. Otherwise, you could find it elsewhere too. It's available for rent and to buy on Amazon Prime. It's called simply Andre the Giant. It's a look at the life and career of professional wrestler Andre Rusimov, who gained notoriety in the 80s as Andre the Giant. And there is like a who's who of people that they interview on this documentary. Besides archive footage of Andre himself, because Andre passed away in 1994. So this is a long time coming, this documentary. They talked to Arnold Schwarzenegger, who had, worked with him on and off in the WWF and WWE. Carrie Elways, Rob Reiner, Robin Wright, Billy Crystal, who were all, part of The Princess Bride with him.
Mm-hmm.
Hulk Hogan, Jesse Ventura, Roddy Piper, Cyndi Lauper, Billy Graham, Randy Savage, all these guys who were in the ring with Andre the Giant at one time or another. Ric Flair, Vince McMahon, Muhammad Ali. It's a who's who of people that they interview because he had such an impact on people throughout his life. And it's also kind of a sad documentary because you get to see like what his life really was like outside of the ring. In the wrestling ring, he was called the eighth wonder of the world. He was this massive, massive superstar. But then you see all this footage of him like sitting on an airplane. He would have to buy 2 seats because he couldn't fit in one by himself. And even then, he would have his head like cocked to the side because he was taller than what the overhead was.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime he rented a hotel room, the bed was too small for him. His feet would always hang off the bed. No chair could fit him. He had to have all of his clothing custom made. And then later in his career, in his late 30s, early 40s, he was 44 when he died. He was in constant pain because his body never stopped growing throughout his entire life. The surgery to stop that from happening, where they removed the pituitary gland, did not exist back then. And so he was constantly growing his whole life. So his bones were always like rubbing together. He was constantly in pain. They talk about in The Princess Bride, in the scenes where he's holding Robin Wright, she's actually being held up by wires because at that point he was too weak to even hold her. This little thing. And it's a fascinating documentary. And Mike, I had to show you this because I got this today. I couldn't wait to show you this. I got a Funko Pop from WWEshop.com because they had a Christmas in July sale going on, and I bought this brand new Funko Pop. It's Hulk Hogan. It's Andre the Giant. And Andre is a lot bigger than Hogan, which I think is hilarious. And they come with their very own WrestleMania 3 wrestling ring that you can place them in.
Can you have Hogan with Andre in the air?
So you can relive the moment that Hulk Hogan body slams Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3 in your Funko Pop ring. And I thought it was really, really cool that it came in today when we're recording this episode about documentaries.
So it looks like that Hogan is more like today's Hogan with all the hair in the back.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He's beginning balding Hogan. That's what we call that one. I actually watched the video.
That looks like Jake the Snake.
I actually watched the video the other day on YouTube, Mike, where it was 4 minutes of people body slamming Andre the Giant.
Oh, Jesus.
Hulk Hogan was not the first nor the only person to do it. So that was just one of the biggest moments, WrestleMania 3. And then that was at the point where he was beginning to deteriorate.
Right.
And so that match was really difficult for him. But it's a fascinating documentary about a fascinating person, a man who once drank 154 beers in one sitting.
We're not worthy.
because-
We're not worthy.
because
They were light beers. They were
was
light beers.
he was so huge that it took a lot of alcohol to get him tipsy. And they actually have a picture of him. He's holding the beer. He has the beer can in his hand, and his hand is so huge. The beer can looks like it's like a mini can in his hand. One of my favorite stories is he's in a bar one night and he's just drinking, and a group of guys who are like feeling themselves because they've been drinking a while decide to pick on Andre and try to pick a fight with him. And he's like, I'm just here drinking, guys. Just leave me alone. Whatever. I'm not looking for any trouble. But they kept, railing him and railing him. And he got so pissed off, he chased them out of the bar. They got in their car, at which point Andre walked over, picked the car up by the driver's side and flipped it over on top.
Let me go back to drinking, boss.
It said he got away before the authorities showed up, and the police are very skeptical when the guys in the car were like a giant flipped them over. So it's a fun documentary, a little sad though too. So definitely a good one to check out. Kevin, this is the one. The next one on your list is the one where Al Gore invents the internet.
He did. He invented the internet just so that he could spread the word. And even if he didn't invent the internet, like it's been reported, he did do this documentary called An Inconvenient Truth back in 2006, which won actually 2 Academy Awards. I think this is the first documentary to win 2 Academy Awards. An Inconvenient Truth is done by Davis Guggenheim, and it's Al Gore going to college campuses and giving a lecture on to raise public awareness on the dangers of global warming and calling for immediate action to kind of curb the destructive effects on the environment. Say what you will politically about Al Gore, I really, don't give a shit. I do think, however, climate change is real, and I'd say with 105-degree temperatures, as we're seeing here in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and seeing as how the entire country, the United States, is essentially on fire.
No, that's just Canada.
No, that's Canada.
That's Canada. That's not us.
Canada is literally on fire. We're just
California has been burning for 20-some years.
Jackson, if you're listening,
Incidentally, Michael, this is about a 20-year-old documentary.
No. Excuse me. California's been burning since I was born, so that's almost 50 years now.
Jackson, if you're listening up there in Canada, it's all your fault.
It's all your fault, Jackson. Thanks a lot. And it's interesting to see how much of this, after 20 years, because it's been made in 2006, or about 17 years in, is coming to fruition. He talked about how streets, the flooding in the streets, the severe weather, the severe tornadoes, and everything else that kind of comes with the carbon emissions that go into the air, and how they will affect the weather patterns. And at that point it was like, we got to do something about this. 2006. Yep. Okay. Right. Thanks. Good movie, by the way. And it's not until now that we're literally suffering from climate change, and everyone's like, wait, what did he say? But we can tell, like, now it's kind of being treated a little more seriously. Electric vehicles are up, solar panels on houses have gone up dramatically. I just felt that this was a really eye-opening documentary, and like I said, despite who the person is who's giving the lecture, it's the information that's being given that's the matter of concern. It doesn't matter if you're red or blue, left or right. It matters if you can see the evidence in what's being presented.
If you want any evidence at all, you have to look at the fact that we had no snow this year.
No snow at all this year. Look at the fact that when we were in quarantine, when we were all stuck, after a day or two of people not being able to drive their cars, or businesses not being able to operate, the level of smog, the level of air pollution diminished, where you could see things that you could never see before. So
you were right. It won 2 Oscars that year. It won the Oscar for Best Documentary Feature and it
Mhm.
won an Oscar for Best Achievement in Music Written for a Motion Picture. Melissa Etheridge for the song "I Need to Wake Up."
Thank God, Melissa Etheridge,
Oh.
go through
Come
your
to my
window.
window. So Mike, what's your third one there? This is a funny one too.
Monty Python, The Meaning of Life. This is when they reunited one last time to do a 10-show marathon at the O2 Arena called One Down, Five to Go. It talks about their 40 years of everything they've done. It's hilarious. A lot of the backstage stuff you see there. There's a great scene where they have actually had Stephen Hawking there, and they did a skit with Stephen Hawking. It was freaking hilarious. They called him up and do you want to do a skit? And he's like, hell yeah. Well, he was like, hell yeah. But,
Not all that old either. It came out in 2014, so it's not even 10 years old yet.
So you're
no,
saying
no.
Graham wasn't in it?
Duh.
Who?
Graham,
Graham.
Yeah,
the one that died.
yeah. He was not there. No.
So
There was archive. There was footage of him there, but
yeah,
no.
archive footage of Graham Chapman. It says.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
yeah, Eric Idle, Terry Gilliam, John Cleese, Michael Palin, and Terry Jones. Which were the
If you
other
haven't
guys.
seen it, I highly recommend watching it if you're a Monty Python fan because it's just as funny. They're still just as funny as they were when they started out.
No, they always are. I even seen like Eric Idle in an interview recently, and he's still pretty hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is another one. Like I remember when it came out, and it's another one that's like on that list of like ones I haven't gotten to yet.
It is on Netflix at the moment.
Oh, nice. So I can put it on my list with Social Dilemma. Next one I have on mine. This one came out in 2018, a couple years after Robin Williams' unfortunate passing,
Mhm.
and it's called Robin Williams: Come Inside My Mind. And it is an intimate look into the life and work of master comedian and actor Robin Williams, as told from some of the people who were like closest to him. So there's interviews with a whole bunch of comedians who knew him best. They interview the people he was on Mork and Mindy with. A lot of archive footage of him with like other actors who have also passed.
He was roommates with Christopher Reeves.
He and Christopher Reeve went to the Juilliard School together in New York.
Mhm.
And yeah, they were roommates for a while. He was best friends with Christopher Reeves. He would
Mhm.
call Christopher Reeves in the hospital after he had his accident, that paralyzed him, to cheer him up every day.
Mhm.
It's just it's an amazing look at a life of a man that like was in obvious pain, but nobody really knew about it.
Mhm.
And another one that's like just really, really funny because it's Robin Williams, but
Mhm.
really, really sad as well because what the outcome of it ultimately is, and it's
Right.
it's I think it was produced by HBO as well. I don't remember. Yeah, it was an HBO production. Robin Williams: Come Inside My Mind. There are actually a couple documentaries about the life of Robin Williams that came out relatively quickly after his death. But this is probably the most complete and one of the better produced ones. That's all I got to say about that. So from Robin Williams, we go to Kevin's fourth one.
We're going to keep up with the comedy, ladies and gentlemen. We went from Monty Python to Robin Williams to a little-known man named Joe Exotic in Florida. He is the epitome of the Florida man. And his documentary series on Netflix was called Tiger King, which
I
was
blame
the
the
latest
pandemic
craze.
for his success, for his popularity.
Yeah. This is what everybody watched when we were stuck inside.
Yeah, this
This
is
is a rival-
definitely a pandemic success.
No. I worked, so I did not do it. I did not.
This is the rivalry between not just one cat eccentric enthusiast, but two big cat eccentric enthusiasts between.
The point they have documentaries about this documentary.
That's right. Between Joe Exotic and Carol Baskin. Fucking Carol did it. And how Joe Exotic is caught in a controversial plot to kill Carol Baskin. Not only that, how his animal park in Florida is really well, let's just say it's not
Island of
well
Dr. Moreau?
run. Yeah, it's not really well run. If you're looking for a hot steaming dumpster fire to watch, I would highly recommend Tiger King.
Dude,
Not only does
the memes for Tiger King when Carol Baskin appeared on Dancing with the Stars. This meme came out. It says, if Carol Baskin doesn't dance to Eye of the Tiger as her first song, I'm never watching Dancing with the Stars again. And there's those change my mind memes, and it says, men can be cat food, change my mind.
There was a lot that came out of this. Joe wanted to run for political office. He wanted, support of Donald Trump. There was somebody who lost an arm or maybe just a hand. There was Joe with his multiple husbands, and look, to each their own, but I didn't know Florida was a polygamous state. Each episode topped the previous episode, which was very tough to do. So I'm going to call it a guilty pleasure. Was there anything informative I got out of this series? No, absolutely not. Was it just, clickbait? Was it, Jerry Springer on in Jerry Springer in a crocodile guy's world? Yes, it was just fun. So
I got a couple more good ones for you. It's a picture of Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love, and it says the original Carol Baskin.
Wow.
And then there's a picture of Justin Bieber walking around without a shirt on, and it says Justin Bieber over here looking like Joe Exotic's next husband.
God.
Oh man, yeah. I admittedly had started watching Tiger King, and I was like, I can't watch something where I'm embarrassed for other people who don't know how to be embarrassed for themselves.
Exactly.
And so I never really finished it.
I never started it.
So
you missed out on some quality filmmaking there,
oh,
Michael.
I'm sure. Won all the Emmys.
Yeah.
Mike, what's your next one there?
My next one is actually an episode from the Netflix series Untold. It's called Crime and Penalties. It's about James Galante, who is a garbage. He owns a garbage company, and he works for the mob. Go figure, garbage company mob.
Mm-hmm.
And he pretty much buys a semi-pro hockey team for the UHL,
Mm-hmm.
or creates one called the Danbury Trashers, which he has his 17-year-old son run. And they were the bad boys of hockey. They would just fight, just to fight. And they almost won the cup. And they had to
it almost sounds like the true story behind the movie Slapshot.
Well, that's what the son wanted. He wanted
like just violence.
he wanted to take Slapshot and mix it with the WWE and put it on the ice. Because they show on one of his birthdays he had like Triple H, The Rock, China, all at one of his birthdays. So they
I hear you.
My money.
Mhm.
So they it only lasted a year, the Dansbury Trashers, because number one, he was paying the guys under the table more than they should be being paid. with money he shouldn't have because it's been laundered or whatnot, because it's mob money. The FBI got him, and since it was all tied, the team was tied to that. They had to disband it.
This on Netflix.
It's
you
actually
said?
it's on Netflix. It's actually pretty good.
I have to check it out. I like everybody else who has a lot of time on their hands. I love true crime documentaries and shit. So
I watch SVU is background noise for me anymore. Any Law and Order is background noise. Like I need an alarm clock that just kind of goes dun dun
dun dun.
because I'll wake up for it.
And one of the their enforcer guy got his leg broke during one of the things.
Mm-hmm.
So they went out. This was the year that the NHL went on strike.
Mm-hmm.
So they went out and got Michael Roop from the Devils that had won the cup the year before.
Got him as a scab.
It's not scab because he's playing.
Oh, he's playing for their league and not the NHL. Yeah.
Yeah. So they paid him. They said they gave him a duffel bag full of money.
Awesome.
I thought this would be up your alley a little bit because hockey's big here in Philly, and it's a mob thing.
Yeah. As an adjacent to true crime, and because we were doing a documentary thing tonight, I've recently started binge watching Beyond Scared Straight on Hulu. Something really satisfying about watching those little asshole kids get the shit scared out of them by criminals.
True enough.
The last one I have on my list is a fairly recent one. Came out in 2020. It's actually written and directed by Alex Winter, who's probably best known as Bill in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. It's called Showbiz Kids. This is another HBO document. HBO does some really, really good documentaries.
Yeah.
It's a documentary about the highs and lows of children in show business, featuring interviews and examinations of the lives and careers of the most famous former child actors in the world. And so it features all of these, kid actors who, got their start very young, and some of them are either still in the business or have left the business for various reasons. It also goes around and interviews some kids who are trying to get into performing, and what it's like living with the stage moms and stage dads that they live with. And so some of the people in the show that they interview are Todd Bridges from Different Strokes, Mila Jovovich, who got her start when she was 16 years old, Jada Pinkett Smith, who was a kid when she started, Cameron Boyce, who was in the Descendants show on Disney and unfortunately passed away in 2020 at the age of 21 from a heart disease. I'm looking for somebody. Henry Thomas from E.T., Mara Wilson, who was in Matilda, Will Wheaton, Evan Rachel Wood. There's a lot of people that are interviewed in this show, and it's the tagline is "The Price of Being a Child Star." And sometimes it works out. Like say somebody like Jodie Foster, who went on to have an Oscar-winning career, and sometimes it doesn't work out. And you think of people
like the kid who played young Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace,
or like Dana Plato, who was on Different Strokes, who ended up ODing later on in life, or people like Corey Haim, who had the same issue and all that.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting documentary, and like I said, HBO just always nails it with the documentaries they make.
Yeah.
So Kev, so I should have put this on my list and I forgot about it. So I'm glad you have it on yours.
I had to change it though, because I saw them both. The original thing I put down was "It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood," which was not the documentary; it was the biopic of Fred Rogers, otherwise known as Mr. Rogers.
It's the one with Tom Hanks, correct?
Yes, with Tom Hanks, and the one Megan and I had seen prior to this, actually at the Ritz. She had won or purchased tickets to see it's "Won't You Be My Neighbor," and this was the documentary that came out before "It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood," following Fred Rogers, who was a pastor, a minister, and um, got into television, and worked for public broadcasting. I think it may have been the Children's Television Network at the time. But he is beloved. Watching this, everything came back to me. Daniel the Tiger, not the Daniel the Tiger now, that's a cartoon. This was an actual hand puppet,
And King
the land of
Friday.
make believe. Right, King Friday. I don't know if the trolley had a name. I think it might have just been called
It
Trolley.
was the,
but
I think it was just called the trolley.
Mhm. And you find out things like, what's his name? Michael Keaton worked on the set because this was produced in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So it's not too far off. And just like how the man was a philosopher.
Mhm.
When you watch it, you really see that he knows what he's doing. And he knows how to answer people who critique him, who question what he's doing. Like he brings it about in such a, I'm doing this out of love. I'm doing this out of kindness. I'm doing this because there needs to be love. There needs to be kindness. Some kids need this more than others, but everybody needs it, and how he just made you feel, watching his show, he made you feel connected to him. You weren't being talked to, you were being, engaging in a conversation with somebody.
He didn't talk down to children. He talked to them like they were
No.
just little adults.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I saw this at the Ritz as well, and it was sold out. It was packed in there. And
Yeah.
by the end of this documentary, me and just about everybody else in that theater were
Crying
sobbing.
your eyes out.
But I
Yeah.
wasn't sobbing sadness. It was like sobbing because I was remembering a time of innocence.
Yes.
When I was a kid watching it, like I grew up watching this. I loved Mr. Rogers. He was one of my heroes. And I was sobbing at the end of this. And I was like, God damn it, I miss Mr. Rogers. We need him now.
We do.
I remember
really do.
a couple of the stories they talk about in the documentary that were really cool was the one where he had a blind girl wrote into the show asking him if he could describe when he was asking him if he was still feeding the fish because she wanted to make sure the fish was okay. And so he started from there on out every episode describing everything he did when he was feeding the fish so that the little blind girl would know that the fish was okay. And then there was the one where there's the story about the African-American family who were in the swimming pool. And the owner of the hotel was throwing acid in the pool to chase them out.
Yeah.
And so the next episode, he had the mailman or whoever it was, the police officer who was a black man. They were sharing the pool together.
Yeah, putting their feet in the pool.
Yeah, like, that was really cool. And then when one of the other characters, I don't remember the character's name, but he was gay, and in real life, and he told Fred Rogers about it, and Fred was like, you're perfect just the way you are, which is what he would say to everybody, and it's like, it's like he was such a man. I was fucking sobbing at the end of this documentary.
Something that came around, I don't remember if this was included in the documentary, but it might have been, where he was giving testimony in front of the U.S. Senate Subcommittee on Communications to kind of get more funding for public television. And guys, I mean, we've watched bits and pieces in the news about subcommittee hearings and things like that, and senators try to grill you. If they're not for you, they're against you, and they're going to try to trip you up. And to watch the conversation go on between him and some of the senators in this committee, and how he just explains it to them, and you can watch their hearts turning as he's talking about the importance, the necessity of what he does and why they need it.
It was like he's a study in patience.
Yes, exactly.
Even like when he was being bashed by people later in his career who were saying that he was enabling kids by making them think they could be whatever they want and all that stuff.
Yeah,
like that part pissed me off so bad.
I can't be whatever I want to be.
Yeah, you can't. It was pissing me off so bad, that part.
Something I found, and I don't think it was, this may have also, there was a part of it included in the documentary. So you guys know of Coco, the gorilla that used sign language, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So this came up on IMDb. It said, although the documentary includes a brief clip of Fred Rogers meeting with Coco the gorilla and shows Coco removing Mr. Rogers' shoes, it doesn't explain the story behind the gorilla's actions. After Coco's death in June of 2018, multiple obituaries for the gorilla explain that Coco faithfully watched Mr. Rogers' show every day. And during their encounter, she removed his shoes because she was used to seeing him do the same thing at the start of every episode.
That is fucking awesome.
Dude, it's interstitial,
amazing.
you know?
That's
It's
amazing.
crazy. Yeah.
Whew. So before I start sobbing, Mike, what's your last one?
My last one is just it's a series, and I'm sure you've seen some of the
Oh,
episodes.
it's a
Lee.
fucking great series, man.
It is. It's Dark Side of the Ring. It's on Vice. It's actually Vice's #1 show.
You can watch it on Hulu as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If you're a big wrestling fan, you want to hear stuff that's not in the ring stuff. I mean, you've got the death of Bruiser Brody in it. It talks about Owen Hart.
There's
One
a
episode.
two-part episode about Chris Benoit.
A 2-part episode about Lion Pillman.
Mm-hmm.
This season they have an episode of Magnum TA, Junkyard Dog. Looking at the list, they got Bam Bam Bigelow, Abdullah the Butcher, and the last episode this season hasn't come out yet. Episode 10, The World According to Marty Jannetty.
No. I want to check out the Abdullah the Butcher one. Yeah, this is it is dark. I mean, it covers a lot of the seedy underbelly of the wrestling business and how a lot of these guys die young, and
especially back during the
80s
territory days.
Yeah, 70s and 80s. All's Hallow Eve mentioned this a little bit on their broadcast when they did their cover of the Chris Benoit story a few episodes back.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a really in-depth series, and it's you don't get interviews from certain people because they don't want to be associated with these stories, but
you get interviews from Mick Foley.
Yeah.
People
who are involved in the stories.
Jim Cornette.
When they interviewed the Godfather during the Owen Hart one because he was supposed to wrestle him the night that he died.
All right.
Bruiser Brody. They interviewed a lot of wrestlers from the Puerto Rican territories because that's where he was killed.
Right.
It's a good show. It's a good series. It's a series documentary
Jake
series.
Roberts is on it. Chris Jericho narrates it.
Yes,
Jim Ross
that's
is
right.
on there a lot. Eric Bischoff's been on there.
It's mostly guys who are like not associated with WWE anymore.
Right. Except for Mick Foley.
Well, he's not really associated with them that much anymore. He doesn't do as much for them as he used to.
Oh, he's doing the Finding Their Treasures right now. So
speaking of like documentaries, did you watch the one I sent you the link for? It was Mick Foley.
I've not had time to sit down and watch that.
You gotta check it out. It's really good.
I have to cast it to the TV and sit down and watch it. It's a little long to be watching on my phone.
Yeah, it's Mick Foley and The Undertaker talking about their cage match. It's awesome. It's a really, really cool video. So that's all of our lists there. Then our top 5 each that we have chosen. I do have a couple little honorable mentions because I can't help myself. If you are a fan of the cult 80s classic Monster Squad, in which you will hear the immortal line, "Wolfman's got nards," then you want to check out the documentary titled "Wolfman Got Nards," which is a behind-the-scenes documentary on the filming of the Monster Squad, a forgotten
kids movie that was pretty terrifying.
It was a pretty terrifying kids movie about virgins and monsters and scary German guys. And Wolfman's genitalia. So if you were a fan or have never seen this film before, check out the film Monster Squad and then watch the documentary Wolfman Got Nards. The other one I have here, honorable mention, is Blue Planet. So National Geographic did a series of documentary miniseries before. One was called Planet Earth, which is an amazing documentary series, and they followed it up with Blue Planet, which looked at all of the world's oceans and seas. But my particularly favorite episode is episode 2 of Blue Planet, which looks at the Mariana Trench, the deepest place on Earth, and looks at the life that somehow managed to evolve 36,000 feet below the ocean surface. It's a really cool episode. And then the last one is because I have a morbid fascination with Scientology and how batshit crazy it is. The most famous Scientology documentary is probably Going Clear, which talks about people who have escaped Scientology and trying to get back into the normal swing of things. But I prefer this one here. It's called My Scientology Movie, which was written and hosted by Louis Theroux, who is a career documentarian. He starts doing this documentary on the inside workings of Scientology, interviewing this guy throughout it who was a former Scientologist and one of the high-ranking ones before he left. And the thing that's amazing about it is as he's filming, eventually Scientologists start showing up at the facility where they're filming and threatening them and spouting information about their private lives that they should have no idea about, but somehow they have this information. It's fucking frightening.
Wow.
Like this it is like a cult and a half, and it's fucking frightening. They do these recreations of Scientology interviews with actors playing Tom Cruise and other people. It's harrowing and funny all at the same time. So I would check that one out, My Scientology Movie. But that is our list for this evening. Mike, do you have any beer trivia or beer history for us this evening?
I have some beer history. Let's see. Yes, the first written record referring to sake in Japan dates to the 3rd century. The first reference to its manufacture dates to the 8th century. While sake is sometimes called rice wine, the process of making it is more in common with brewing beer.
Either of you guys a fan of sake?
Only
Depends.
when I'm at a hibachi and the guy's got the little man with the wee and he, pulls
Now,
down the
I've
pants
had-
and wheeze in your mouth with the sake.
I've had some sake flights, and there's definitely different tastes in different sakes. So some of them are good, some of them are a little strong, some of them are a little.
Generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of it, but
Mm-mm. It's also supposed to be served warm, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not even like room temperature. I'm talking like warmed up.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's more room temperature.
More room temperature, but not chilled or anything like that.
Yeah.
So, how are your drinks this evening, gentlemen?
Well, good.
Mine was creamy and carbonated, but quite tasty.
Mine was very good. Darker than I'm used to for the summer, but that's okay because it's a milk stout, and I enjoy my milk stouts and my dark beers.
Excuse me.
And Michael, how was your drink?
It was good. I mean, what do you expect from a margarita? It's got to be good.
So thank you for
That's the
joining
wrong
us
bit of
tonight
the
for
cup.
episode 115, our favorite documentary films. We hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast as much as we enjoyed recording it for you. Don't forget, you send us an email at filmsoffermentation@gmail.com or visit linktree.com to find all of our social media and podcast links. We're on Threads now. We've been on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook for a while, so please, shout us out there, talk to us a little bit. Give us some recommendations for movies or topics or drinks we should try out. Become part of the Films and Fermentation family. And don't forget to stop by the crossroads between pickled and fermented next time as we present episode 116. We are bringing back the bracket. We haven't used the bracket in a while, but we're going to bring back the bracket to talk about our favorite fourth wall breaks in movies and see who wins the championship for the best fourth wall break ever. I'm Leo.
I'm Kevin.
I'm Mike.
Cheers, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I understand that. I wish I had some weeks off.
Although I will say, I have two classes. One's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade kids. The other one is kindergarten through 3rd grade. And the kindergarten through 3rd grade kids are hilarious. They have all that innocence that I, never had when I taught seniors. Not jaded at all. Everything is fascinating to them. I used Play-Doh to conduct electricity and light up an LED light, and it was like David Blaine to them.
It's magic.
Yeah, they were like, "What?
What?
Although
I'm
this is
gonna
the
do
first
this when I
time,
get home.
in 24 years in education that I had 12 lower school kids alone with me, and I tried to do arts and crafts with them. That was a learning experience.
The learning experience you would never try again, or
Not unless I have somebody here to help me. Because they're like, because they all need help with everything, and so like they're all yelling my name, needing help with something, but not waiting their turn.
well,
Right.
of course not.
But in a cute way. I had one little boy today told me a story about he's the best builder in his family. I said, "Yeah, what did you build?" And he goes, "I made a trap for my baby brother." Now this kid's in kindergarten. He made a Rube Goldberg trap, basically, that involved a crayon tied to a string, tied to a lever, tied to a bucket full of marbles that fell on his baby brother after the baby pulled on the crayon. It was horrifying and hilarious all at the same time.
Sounds amazing.
And then at the end of the day, we couldn't find him because he was in the bathroom. His mom was waiting outside to pick him up. And one of the counselors knocked on the door, and she's like, "Are you okay in there?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm pooping." He's like, "I'll be out. I'm a fast pooper."
I'm already holding my nose.
It's okay. You're a fast pooper.
Mhm.
I was a fast pooper. It's the meds. All comes out.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
You're going to blame it on the meds? Oh.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm beat.
Yeah. This podcast is hosted by Buzzsprout. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners. The team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message to the world. If you want an upgrade, Buzzsprout has tons of guides to help you find exactly what you need. We use Buzzsprout and it's a game changer for us. An all-new analytics system helps us track who's listening to our show and where they're listening to it. If you'd like to use Buzzsprout as well, follow the link in our show notes to buzzsprout.com. And while you're there, let them know that Films and Fermentation sent you.